5 days, 16 hours, 9 minutes, and 19 seconds. That's how long I played Path of Exile 2 before I even began writing this review. It is a total of 136 hours of gameplay, and that doesn't include the Mercenary I played in early access, who got deleted, or all the previews I had the opportunity to do for IGN, or the hours since then as I hit level 86 and started a Ranger. I am not a Path of Exile expert. I am a new player to Path of Exile, and I don't know all the ins and outs of the game. A lot of my time was spent reading text, enjoying the tiny details in-game, and trying to figure out the systems thrown at me while making my own unique build to get started before peeking at the pros to see how far off the meta I was. I was actually pretty close. With that preface, I can safely tell you that Path of Exile 2 was my favorite game of 2024, and it's still in early access. When I'm not playing Path of Exile 2, I'm thinking about Path of Exile 2. Usually it's about the last boss I died to, or hearing those lovely loot drops in my sleep. The gameplay as its own reward is simply superbly designed. I know there are plenty of memes about the intimidating skill tree, but it's really not as complicated as it seems. When you start out, all you're really doing is selecting basic things like attack speed or damage, and it's not until several levels in that you need to decide if you want to go a different route. I've played mostly as the Mercenary, but I've also tried the Witch, Ranger, Warrior, and Monk at preview events held throughout 2024, and you'd think I get sick of the game, but simply put, you don't. Get into the 80 plus levels and finish your maps, and you may find yourself interested in dropping another 50 hours into a second character, or 100, or 200. It never stops. I ask myself questions like, how could I have avoided that death? How could I stack honor better in Trial of Secumus? Should I go for that ascendancy, or hope they patch it just to be a bit more forgiving? Once you get into the map system, you can actually juice your waystones by dropping on orbs to modify it to make it stronger, or give you buffs or enemy buffs, kind of a little gambling mini game. And what's even more interesting is that they've already announced the first patch note, and the first patch note addresses a ton of the complaints. There's now new towers that you can explore. You can actually see the citadels on the map when you're in endgame, and I can actually tell that I'm kind of close to one. They haven't drastically done any nerfs the way that Diablo 4 did, which really snapped me out of the game. Granted, I didn't play a sorcerer. A friend of mine, Brian, said that he basically had a character bricked because of the first patch. Besides that, I haven't heard a lot of complaints. It's still doing incredibly well on SteamDB. And honestly, once I start playing it, time just evaporates. I just can't stop once I start. There's something about the loop of getting your character just a little bit more powerful every time you level up, and challenging yourself to find new builds and new ways to tackle problems. The story isn't half bad either. Now, when I was doing the early previews for IGN, they did say that they spent a lot of time on the story, and this is only part of it. So they kind of use a travel back in time mechanic. You go through acts 1 through 3, and you have a pretty solid time there, but then you do it all again. And at first, I thought this would be a terrible idea. I thought I would hate it. But actually, when you actually do it the second time, you basically tear through acts 1, 2, and 3, and then you end up in the end game, which is a map system. You start with tier 1 maps, and then hopefully you get some tier 2 maps to drop, tier 3, tier 4, and you go all the way up to tier 15. And then you can go into corrupted areas. You can also do things with your waystones to make the event more challenging, and that is sort of the end game grind. You travel through this map, you try and level up your Atlas tree, and you go from there. The only reason I really stopped playing was because I turned the game off, first of all, but more importantly, it was because at the time, I had felt like I beat the game. I was just blindly going through on my maps, trying to find a citadel so that I could actually engage with the endgame content a little bit more. Fast forward a few weeks, and Grinding Gear Games released a massive patch that basically addressed all criticisms of the game. I have had a blast playing Path of Exile 2. I want to keep this review succinct because honestly, I have no notes. I am very happy that I spent $30 on the game. I have very few complaints. I suppose if I really had to stretch it, I do wish that it was clearer when you got a good drop versus a bad one. There's a lot of reading into your stats and doing a little bit of math and min-maxing your character up. But I'm really pushing it there because some people really engage with that and really end up enjoying that system. Even the uniques got tweaks, and that just means another reason to start a character that is fun to play as. Now, we already know that there's going to be 2 additional classes added in the near future, which is a perfectly great time to sign back on and play more. And I think if I had one other critique, I think the level 3 ascension mechanic, at least pre-patch, I haven't tried them out since the patch, I think it was a little bit too punishing. I don't like the honor system in Trial of Sechamus because there have been times where I built into armor wasn't balanced correctly, there were issues with armor builds, and basically I got touched by one orb of fire and instantly died. So in early game, the Trial of Sechamus wasn't great. So level 3 ascension was a little so-so. Some people figured out ways to get through it, but I didn't find that quite enjoyable. And one of my early complaints was that I needed a colorblind option because I couldn't see the effects on the ground. Turns out that was a bug that they fixed. So now you should be able to see attacks a little bit better, but occasionally you will just get insta-deleted by something that maybe there's so many effects happening on the screen, you didn't see it, and then you just instant die. So all of that said, and I am stretching for criticism here because I adored this game. Like 160 hours or something into Path of Exile 2 at this point. It is definitely a highlight. It is $30 if you want early access, but keep in mind, this game is literally going to be free. They make all of their money from the microtransaction store, which has some items that are priced at sort of the higher end, in my opinion, but the game costs $0. If you do get the $30 edition, I highly recommend that you buy some stash tabs, specifically one of the tabs that allow you to sell things, one of the tabs that allow you to organize your currencies, and one of the tabs that allow you to organize your skill gems. And they often do sales where you can get access to those at a reasonable cost. Path of Exile 2 absolutely blew me away. The gameplay loop alone will keep you coming back. You start out squishy, you keep getting more and more powerful, and when you fail, it doesn't really feel like it's because the boss is cheap. It feels like there's something that you haven't learned or something you need to adjust, and often you'll find that if you make those adjustments, you come back and you one-phase the boss. At least that was my experience most of the time. Except for that Act 2 boss. He was pretty tough on my first clear. I cannot recommend Path of Exile 2 enough. Now, before I give my review score, I do have to let you know I do things a little bit differently here. I have a review scale that goes off of what the internet thinks are the only scores that really matter. So, games that I review can only be one of 3 scores on the 1 out of 10 spectrum. They can be a 7 out of 10. These are the games that are sort of, they're okay, they're good, maybe they're not great, but they're worth checking out. If they're lower than a 7 out of 10, they are a 1 out of 10. Because we all know if you score a game a 6 out of 10, it is the worst game that you've ever seen according to internet logic. And if it is above a 7 out of 10, you have scored it too high. So therefore, every game above a 7 out of 10 will be a 10 out of 10 on this channel. And Path of Exile 2 is absolutely a 10 out of 10 game, even in early access. The most important reason I'm giving it a 10 out of 10 is very simple. Grinding Gear Games has excelled at the base game. They have been quick to respond to fan criticisms and critiques. They have addressed issues with the game masterfully, coming back from break and dropping a massive patch that addressed almost everything. And this game has what it takes to stay in conversations and be interesting for players for years to come. I cannot wait until the next act of the story drops or all of the acts drop. I am very interested to play the Druid, which is rumored to be one of the next character drops. They might have even confirmed that. And this game is worth your time. Drop the $30 if you want to get in now, or just wait until it's free. They absolutely cooked with this one. I hope you'll try it out. Thanks for watching, everybody. This video is brought to you by viewers like you. Thank you so much for supporting. If you want to support more, you can do so on patreon.com/SaveStatePlus. Thank you to all the patrons. The platinum tier patrons include Christopher Eddy, Inner Machine, Philaroni, Savage03, Spingetter889, The Scarecrow121. Don't like Patreon, you can also support on YouTube. Please consider hitting that subscribe button, hitting that bell. I'm going to get out of here, but please check out my Assassin's Creed Shadows preview while I have you. I'll see you for the next one. Bye for now, everybody. Play Path of Exile.